We will now move on to our next session, the last one in the morning. So evolution of the Japan-Australia investment relationship through energy transition opportunity and challenges. The discussion will be moderated by NATSUKO Ogawa, partner at Ashurst. I would like to invite the panelists and moderator to the stage. And just recently, I would like to share a great news with you. NATSUKO has been appointed by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Penny Wong, as the next chair of the Australia-Japan Foundation, the first female chair and the first Australian-Japanese chair. How wonderful. Congratulations, Natsuko. Now, floor is yours, Natsuko, please.
Thank you very much, Takashi-san and the Nikkei, for this wonderful opportunity to present and moderate this, I hope, very exciting panel session. I'm going to ask the panellists to introduce themselves briefly in a moment, but I did want to start with some personal reflections on basically how the Australia-Japan relationship has really influenced my whole life. My father actually moved to Australia in the 1960s as really a student in Japan of the English language at university. He had the opportunity through the AJBCC, in fact, to come to Australia to teach at an Australian school in Perth, in Western Australia. And that was really the start of his connection and our family's connection with Australia. He remained here for the remainder of his career. He was a teacher at Curtin University for a very long time in Japanese, and he also had the privilege of being able to work on a number of major projects in Western Australia, interpreting for the Western Australian government and Japanese companies. So I was born into that household, and I'm not yet 60, so I haven't yet started my new life yet, but in my current life, I grew up in Western Australia in a family that had a lot of friends, mainly from Japanese trading companies that had invested in iron ore and LNG in some of these very nation-building projects that really have been the bedrock, I suppose, of the Australia-Japan relationship that we all very much enjoy today. And now, as the parent of a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old who, through the support of many others, we've managed to raise as bilingual children, I really have a great lot of hope for the future that they might have, hopefully also contributing to the relationship. Who knows what they might do, but I certainly think that they're going to be doing some very different things to what we've done, but still very exciting. So when I look back at that, I have mentioned the resources projects and the really very successful traditional model of Japanese investment in Australia, which has been characterised largely by joint ventures, where, as I mainly have mentioned earlier, really founded on partnerships and long-term investment together and working together. And so today, when we're looking at the evolution of the relationship, and particularly through an energy transition lens, what I'm really going to be hoping that the panel can bring to life for us is, what's still working for us in that model. What do we really love about that model, and how is that now being challenged, and how is it changing when we look at the opportunities and challenges of energy transition? And I'm also really pleased that this morning's discussion has also touched on, the personal and the individual sort of aspects of those of us in the relationship, how each of us is actually being challenged to sort of think about what's next in terms of our own career journeys, and also thinking about our organisations and how we actually bring through future leaders. And I'm very pleased that on our panel today we have one of our AJBCC future leaders, TASHIRO-san, who I'm going to ask to introduce herself in a moment. But yes, what we've tried to do on this panel is really to bring together some people with very different perspectives and different backgrounds to engage in discussion. So I will just now ask MONAMI-san, TASHIRO-san to give a brief introduction. MONAMI is a director on the board of Marubeni Aluminium Australia, and I've had the privilege of working with her for a number of years in relation to the Portland Aluminium project in particular. So Monami-san, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Natsuko-san. And it's a great honor to be part of this prestigious event. And I really would like to thank all the attendees and the Nikkei team to having me. So good morning, everyone. My name is MONAMI TASHIRO. I serve as a director at Marubeni Aluminium Australia, a subsidiary wholly owned by Marubeni Corporation. Marubeni Corporation is one of Japan's largest trading houses, engaging in a wide range of business activities worldwide, including the trading of goods and services and the investment in industrial project and resource development. I've been in Australia since 2019 and focusing on our minority investment in 2 aluminium smelters, one in Queensland operated by Rio Tinto and another in Victoria run by Alcoa. I've had a great opportunity to work in several countries, including Japan, Canada, France, and Australia, which has deepened my passion for international collaboration. And my experience in aluminium industry has shown me how crucial energy is, especially since aluminium smelters consume over 10% of electricity. And it's really enormous. And I'm highly motivated by the challenge of combining the traditional practices with new energy solutions. And I'm excited to see how Japan and Australia can collaborate in this transition. Thank you.
Thank you. So Monami and I have known each other for a number of years. Darren and I have only just recently met, actually, but Octopus is a major investor and developer in renewable energy projects, and Darren is the co-MD of Renewables for Octopus in Australia. Darren, your company's been looking very closely at working with Japanese companies now for a time, and that's the reason why we actually met originally. Would you like to just introduce yourself briefly, your background and your interest?
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for having me here today. Really pleased to be able to join everyone. As I said, my name's Darren Brown, co-managing director of Octopus's Renewables business in Australia. So for those who don't know, Octopus was a UK-based company founded in around 2001, still private, very large fund manager and investor in renewables and other sectors in the UK. We've been in Australia since 2018 and have over 55 people here now and $1 billion deployed in renewables, an $11 billion pipeline of renewable assets we're developing in Australia. My background, I've been in the energy industry for 20 years. Originally, I actually started in oil and gas, so I have a background in understanding how those projects come together from an M&A, infrastructure, engineering perspective. And I transitioned over to renewables over a decade ago, which isn't an unfamiliar story now in renewables, whilst there's a number of people who started in their careers in renewables. More increasingly, we are seeing people come from the oil and gas background and sectors. There's a lot of similarities and skill sets that can be applied in many ways. And our interest and my interest here is really to talk more about the potential collaboration between Australia and Japan. We've got deep interest in partnering more, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for our 2 countries to be doing more, particularly in the renewable sector, as we look to transition away from carbon-based fuels and talk about how we can create firmed renewable energy.
Okay, thanks, Darren. And last but not least, IINO-san, so the Managing Director and Head of Oceania for MUFG in Australia. Welcome. Been really happy to be collaborating with MUFG, really I think since last year when you sort of arrived, across a range of subjects, but we have also sort of talked quite a lot about opportunities for collaboration, including energy transition. I'm really interested to hear from IINO-san around what he's seeing in the financing and funding, which is something that we've also heard a little bit about earlier. But would you like to give us a little bit of an introduction, IINO-san? And I should just say that IINO-san is, there is a bit of Victorian bias on this panel. So IINO-san is representing Sydney on this panel. But yeah, your reflections having been now here for about just over a year now, I think, IINO-san, and yeah, your observations and impressions of the opportunities.
Thanks, Natsu. Thanks, Natsuko-san. Also, it's very honor to be able to join this event. So again, my name is TAKAHIRO. I'm head of Oceania for MUFG Bank. And okay, can you hear me? Sorry. My name is TAKAHIRO, head of Oceania for MUFG Bank. A little bit introduction about MUFG Bank. We have, one of the largest bank in Japan. We have, under MUFG Group, we have 34 million individual clients and 1.1 million corporate clients. We have opened up the office about 100 years ago in Sydney. So I've been in this industry for 28 years, and born and raised in Tokyo. Some of the colleagues, Aussie colleagues told me I have a bit of a US accent. I had 2 stints in New York, so probably that's where I got this US accent. My career has 2 pillars. One is HR. Most recently, I spent 9 years in HR. The other one is a global corporate banking business. Again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and that's really fantastic because as I say, I was really interested to hear the discussions around the HR systems, and I'm sure, Ino-san, you can sort of contribute a little bit of your view on that a little later on the panel. So let me take everyone back to where I started with my initial remarks around the traditional model for investment by Japanese companies in joint ventures, and I think, the Portland Aluminium smelter, for example, that Marubeni is a participant in is a really good example of that. I'm just going to ask now Tashiro-san to reflect on why that model of investment has been so successful or is so successful, and do you think that this will remain the preferred model for investment by Japanese companies or one of them, and what kinds of objectives does that kind of model achieve?
Yep, Natsuko-san, thank you for the question. Yes, the traditional joint venture structure where Japanese companies hold a minority stake remains a preferred investment model, especially in complex and capital-intensive industries like aluminium. And for instance, at the Portland Aluminium smelter, a joint venture between Alcoa Acetic and Marubeni demonstrate how this structure allows us to leverage the partner's expertise while contributing strategically. This structure also meets invested objectives by sharing risks, accessing the diverse knowledge, and facilitating a collaborative decision-making process, which aligns well with Japanese approach to business. And Marubeni, Alcoa, and Acetic have been joint venture partners for over 30 years. And all of us share similar mid to long-term investment visions, which allows us to really overcome the challenges and maintain a stable partnership. This is based on my experience. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that really does highlight, Tashiro-san, the real benefits, and interested in your observation too around the alignment of the objectives of the joint venture parties. Where you are essentially, Alcoa is obviously the operator of that joint venture, but you've got sort of relatively similar minority shareholdings, if you like, but still very strategically aligned. On the other hand, we have seen recently that, particularly in new areas like the renewable energy sector, that there's a range of new models that have been developing, and Darren will tell me that they've been around now for more than a decade. But really interested, Darren, to sort of hear about the types of models and Octopus as a fund manager, pulling those things together and contrasting, I suppose, that traditional model to what are the kinds of objectives perhaps that investors into the kind of investments that you're putting together, what are they kind of looking for, and why are those models a good model for achieving those kind of objectives?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I guess first I just wanted to acknowledge that the more traditional model that was spoken about is something that we're really familiar with, and we end up having a lot of conversations with both local superannuation funds, global superannuation funds, and global investors about that direct investment approach. And I think in some instances it makes sense when you sort of think back to some of the oil and gas sectors where you've got these large singular projects that might be worth $10 billion in their own right, own management board structures that are set up in that way. when we think about it from a fund or a platform point of view, the way that we think particularly about renewable energy is that one individual asset is not useful in its own right. So if you have a standalone solar farm, or you have a standalone wind farm, or a standalone battery, when you think about renewable energy, it's about creating firmed green energy. If you're running a solar farm, that runs during the day. What are you doing at night time? So when you're a user of that energy, you want to think about how do you create a platform? How do you have all of these assets work together? And whilst each individual asset won't be worth $10 billion, when you think about what the Australian economy is going to spend over the next 20 years, it's probably about $12 to $14 billion every year for the next 20 years to transition. And so that opportunity is enormous. The best way to do that is through a platform approach where you own and you have access to a combination of the best wind, solar and storage across Australia to create firmed green energy. And then to talk about how you're investing into that platform, and you're involved in the board, decision-making, development, future offtakes, so all energy from plants, no different to what sort of industry you're in. Someone takes the offtake, so whether you're buying LNG on a long-term deal or you're buying wind or solar or storage on a long-term deal, it's about the offtake. And there's lots of opportunities for us to be partnering with Japanese investors, both financial and energy trading houses, to partner with them about both local investment here, but also green hydrogen in the future and other mechanisms as well. And if you want green hydrogen, you need 24/7 energy. You won't get that from one single plant. You will get that from the best mix of wind, solar and storage across the country that it can offer at the lowest cost and the most competitive. And so the partnership approach becomes really important at a strategic level to talk about what are the objectives, what are you looking to achieve out of that? Is it about investing in renewables and being part of that? Is it about creating green hydrogen supply chains? Is it about setting your company up for the future? And that's where a lot of our really exciting conversations are occurring.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask Tashiro-san whether she has anything to add to that. And I think the key things coming out of Darren's comments in terms of keywords to me are strategic is one of them, because I think that when often we talk to Japanese companies looking at fund investments, they tend to see that as being a passive type of investment, and that doesn't necessarily link well to the active part, which is what traditionally they have enjoyed being part of. And I think you've dispelled that myth pretty well with your comments now, Darren. But Tashiro-san, do you sort of see that kind of option available, I guess, or interesting for Marubeni?
Yeah, we think the portfolio investment seems quite interesting, but basically the Marubeni's investment focus on the areas where our participation brings significant value. For example, we hold the minority shares in Australian aluminium smelters to meet our customers' needs through our marketing expertise. Recently, Rio Tinto entered into a strategic partnership with Marubeni for low-carbon aluminium marketing in Asia Pacific. And this collaboration leverages our extensive trading network and our commercial capabilities and our strong relationship with downstream customers. So basically, still Marubeni's investment is, focusing on the areas where we can truly contribute. But we sometimes make the equity investment without the veto rights and to explore new areas.
Yeah, that's good to hear that there are some examples of that kind of flexibility where you can still achieve your strategic aims. Ino-san, we had a quick and interesting conversation before this session, and you were making some really interesting observations around, again, I think sort of the contrast between those previous sort of major big projects and the kind of environment that we're seeing today from your perspective. Would you like to sort of elaborate on that and add to that conversation?
Yeah, thanks. I think in the past, the business transformation, transition was much, coming with the bigger scale, coal mining, LNG. But I think what we've seen is our clients are taking on a journey of GX transition. but the difference is, we are targeting a 2050, decarbonization. But how to get there? It depends. There's tons of ways to get there. Plus, new technologies are out there, and then you never know, how to get there, or which new technology is gonna survive or, prevail. So, there's a lot of uncertainty or unknowns around it. So those, the tough part is, those, new technologies and new business opportunities are kind of broken down into smaller segments, and there's a lot of complexity around it. So that's the kind of, quite difference from the past, business transformation. So that's why, banks are trying to get involved at the earlier stage.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've observed, and actually it was one of your colleagues, Ino-san, who raised this trend with me maybe a couple of years ago, is that the bank and your competitors as well, I think, are starting to look more at taking even equity like investments into things like hydrogen or I think renewable energy. That sort of has got a history to it, and I think project financing is very commonplace there. But I think early technologies, we are actually starting to see a bit of equity investment, and I know that when we're sort of talking to participants in projects which kind of see that kind of bank participation, they get a little bit confused about what exactly is the bank doing in this context. But would you like to sort of comment a little bit more around that trend?
Yep. Natsuko-san, myself, kind of joking, like, banker just talk about debt financing, that could be really boring. So we should talk about something else, which is equity. So I think to give you a little bit of background, one driver is obviously the cost share, reduction of cost shareholding, which we've been talking about this for 20 years, but these days it's making headline, and actually, so the expectation from shareholders, obviously, if you unwind those investment, obviously, so we got to look for better use of capital. So one of which is another investment, but we're not just looking for better return or better access to debt financing that might come later on. But what we are looking for through those equity investment is we try to be we try to support transition transformation of clients. We try to create jointly create business opportunities or values. We try to make a difference by providing solution to those social and environmental issues. So one caveat is investment amount by those Japanese banks are capped to 5% due to Japanese banking regulation. But oftentimes those 5% investment could be could be the final piece of the whole project, or could be the kind of difference, bridging, people from, minority investment to majority investment. So we have a few examples, majority is in Japan, but some other global examples. In the US, we, invested in the huge, hydrogen station projects. Also, we made an investment in some company which has technology to turn ethanol into, sustainable aviation fuel. We also one in UK, which is to produce 1,000 e-buses in UK. We also want investing in Oceania, which is multi-purpose large property project led by Yuzu and Mitsubishi Estate. So we did the multiple those investments.
Yeah, and do you think that it's also helpful for the bank to get in early so that you can sort of build up your own internal expertise and knowledge of projects? Hopefully some of those projects will be successful and will move into development and become larger projects. So is that also something that the bank would be seeking to achieve as part of those smaller and important investments that it's making?
Yes, of course. Like I said, we're not just looking for return, but we want to be sort of part of those, successful projects. And so key is again, we are we want to be enabler of those GX transition. And plus, this is also important from Australia and Japan energy security perspective. So, we want to get involved in the project that can, ensure those, off-taking projects. But also we want to be a part of a, solution for Australian economy as well, for Australia to achieve net zero target.
Yeah. I think the only thing that you did point out earlier around the constraints on the bank as a regulated institution as to how actively you're able to participate, but as you pointed out, even those smaller contributions could be critical to actually getting a project up and going. We had a really sort of comprehensive discussion earlier around innovation as well, and I know that that is something that the bank's customers obviously are very, very keen on. I just wondered whether you might just want to supplement some of the discussions from the earlier innovation discussion too around how you see that, both from the bank's perspective, also you're obviously investing in your own innovative technologies, but from your customer's point of view.
To give you a little bit of background, beauty of being in the commercial banking business is to be able to have a broader perspective of entire economy or evolution of it, because we have wide range of clients, like I said. So what's happening is that I think Japan as a whole has been a little bit kind of lagging behind in terms of open innovation, because Japanese corporates has to rely on internal resources, because external markets, higher markets doesn't have much liquidity or viability of the talent. So what we have to do when we see gaps in skills and experience and knowledge or headcounts, HR has to do internal rotation, provide training to fill out the gap, which takes really long time. So that's why for example, like Japanese startups has to rely on IPO to cash out or scale up, versus in the US where large corporates are playing much larger role in the ecosystem. A lot of startups, it's a flip side of the thing. Many of startups can do M&A to cash it out. So. But I think finally, sense of urgency kicked in Japan, because we are facing aging and shrinking economy. So a lot of corporates are looking for new technologies or startups to team up with. So what kind of role banks going to play? One thing, obviously, the investment. Our case, we established, we teamed up with a company called the Liberty Capital to form up some joint venture investment. Plus, we established a startup fund, one in Indonesia, one in India. So that's one thing. Second thing is I think we can connect these dots. So that's why we enter into MOU with the Artisan, one of the largest venture capital in Australia, because they have 600 portfolio companies. And us, like I said, we have 1.1 million corporate clients in Japan. So what we're trying to do is to connect the dots, so that that can lead to some business opportunity. Also we do some we established a climate infrastructure fund, along with other partners, which is kind of focusing on climate infrastructure investment in emerging countries. So bank that's another kind of example for variety of fund offering by the bank.
Yeah, and I think intermediaries, if you like mega banks, can perform such an important role in terms of raising awareness and informing investors and corporates in the markets around the opportunities. So obviously, working together with the Nikkei, hopefully we can continue to elevate interest in those new areas. Son, you did just mention HR systems, and I did foreshadow that was something that I did want to cover in this session. One of the observations around Japanese companies is that I believe that they're very good at developing journalists who are people who are lifetime employees in their organisations, and they become very, very expert at navigating their own organisations and their internal approval processes in particular. On the other hand, I think the perception in Australia is that we tend to value specialists and people who've got particular skills and they're very deep and knowledgeable in those areas, perhaps don't tend to stray too far from those specialist areas. I wanted to just now flick back to Tashiro-san to comment a little bit around that, her perception of, is that sort of where training companies or Japanese companies like Marubeni are at in terms of HR and career development, or do you sort of see that starting to change?
Yeah, thank you, Natsuko-san. So Marubeni places a strong emphasis on the diversity in the career development, and fostering both specialist and generalist. I myself is a generalist, and because as a minority shareholder, we need to really understand all the aspects of the investment and what is happening in the operation. Unlike in the past, there is no single ideal career path. And instead, Marubeni is nurturing a variety of career trajectories now. So Marubeni sends employees to MBAs, executive programs, language trainings, and even the master courses at Australian unis and secondment to other companies to provide diverse experiences. And I myself personally benefited from the language training in France and attended at the executive program at the London Business School recently. As a trading house, we must stay agile and responsive to global changes. And a quality even Warren Buffett valued, and he is holding the 9% shares in all 5 top Japanese trading houses now. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that sort of international perspective is really important, and I thought it was great in the earlier discussions, the points around Australia and Japan thinking about how they can work with a view to the external, like third countries and those markets. We've got 5 minutes. I've been sort of given the 5-minute signal. I wanted to just ask Darren to just touch on, with your oil and gas background, Darren, and I think you did mention earlier, how that skill set is very valuable, even as you've sort of had your 10-year plus career now in renewables. But when you're recruiting for new people in your organisation, how do you sort of go about selecting the right people to bring on board, noting that, I think that new skills are needed all the time. So how do you go about that decision making?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Octopus is a bit unique about how they look to recruit. We hire for cultural first. So before you start any more formal interview processes, you have a cultural interview with the organisation that talks about who you are as a person, what's important to you, why you want to be in this industry, why you want to be part of Octopus. We're a really small business in Australia. We're 50, 60 people. Globally, we're over 1,000. But even in the UK, everyone met the founder, Simon Rogerson, before they joined the organisation, up until about that level. And it was really around people as a business, because it's so important with what we do. So as a small organisation, roles tend to be quite broad. And so whilst we're looking for specialist skill sets, you do end up blurring into M&A or development or energy markets or into operations. And as we grow, we're continuing to narrow some of those roles a little bit. But the most important thing we look for is culture in the person. So they're going to add to that team, add to the business, and work as a team. Because what we find is that in bringing these projects together, it's actually team first, and the culture side of it actually makes it happen.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and I was almost thinking that sounds a little bit like the interview process for jobs in Japan for graduates, where essentially they just have to give a presentation at the interview about why they want to join that organisation, and it's not necessarily about their skills or their background, but more about their passion and wanting to actually work in the organisation. IINO-san, I was interested when we were chatting last week, just completely separately, to hear about the breakdown between sort of your bank's graduate program and the number of, I guess, external lateral recruits that you're bringing on. Would you like to sort of comment around that? Because I found that discussion quite surprising.
Yeah. Like I said, not just Japanese, but the Japanese corporates are relying on college recruit to retain talents and basically grow them and then pretty much employees are sticking to the same company. But as technology in everything is changing pretty fast, so we cannot catch up with this internal rotation. So so that's why a lot of corporates are looking for external talents. So MUFG's case, for the last fiscal year, I think half of the new joiners are coming from mid-career recruit. So which is great, not just to fill out the gap much in a faster way, but also to get some different perspective, different culture, into us. So I think that's really great from a diversity perspective as well. But not just in Japan, but also in Australia. Majority of our employees are from financial institution or other banks. But these days we are hiring some of the employees with energy transition experience, expertise. So that also helpful to introduce different perspective into us.
Okay, I think I'm going to move to a wrap up very quickly. But I hope that that discussion has been enlightening for you all in the room. I think it demonstrates that we need to sort of actually be quite flexible in our mindset around what's worked in the past, even though those things still remain very important. We are sort of on the cusp of a new age, I guess, and so we need to actually think flexibly around structures, the roles that our organisations might actually take in those investment structures and funding structures. And when we sort of think about teams of people who are going to work well, we need to think really flexibly about their backgrounds and what their strengths might be that they bring to the table, and not necessarily sort of think about what they don't do, but sort of more focused on what they are able to bring, and hopefully, as Darren said, develop a culture where everyone's sort of moving towards the same sort of goals. And I think all of that makes for a very exciting though challenging future, where I do believe that there's a lot of education still to happen on both sides, a lot of hard work to understand each other better and understand each other's perspectives and challenges better, but equally, hopefully, a very rewarding conversation that we can have around that to build something new. So I think I'll wrap it up there. And thank you very much for your attention. Thanks to the panelists.